so far, we've talked a lot about the business side of getting started. Talked about selling ads and having partners and things like that. But how do you actually get that site? Right? You actually need to be online somewhere. That is your business. You have to be online. So we'll talk about getting online, and then we'll talk about the ad part of it, how that all works. So Broadstreet, I already mentioned this. Me and John, you can find us online. So getting set up, to break it down, there's only two things you really have to care about. One is get WordPress. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, what is WordPress? Or it's basically the software that you use to write the content online. It sits on a server somewhere, you log in, you write your content. That's what WordPress is. There are alternatives to WordPress like Drupal or Joomla. I don't recommend them. I recommend going with WordPress because other publishers like Red Bank Green, Baristanet, and probably thousands of others across the US use WordPress. Now, WordPress also makes up about 25% of the internet. So it's not like it's some software that no one else has heard of or it's specialized to a specific industry. Almost all bloggers use WordPress. Well, I mean, 25% of them. Second part of that is getting a domain. So redbankgreen.com, baristanet.com, whatever your awesome name for your site is, .com. Right? Those are the only two parts. Get a WordPress host and get a domain. So when it comes to getting a WordPress host, I always tout this company, and it gets to the point where it seems like there's some sort of connection between me and them. But there's a company called WP Engine where I've done a lot of freelancing, started with Red Bank Green, 4 sites on WordPress, and I've worked with a lot of awful, awful web hosts. And I'll get into the different problems with different web hosts in a second, but I really love WP Engine. I won't say any more than that because I have a slide in a few minutes. Secondly, getting a domain name. A lot of people just go to GoDaddy and register a domain name. That's perfectly fine. I'm kind of a fan of Gandhi.net. Costs $12. They don't lock your domain. There's no trickery. You just buy the domain there, and then we'll get into how you actually point that domain at your WordPress host. But get the place where WordPress lives, get the domain name, and link the two together. These are the alternatives: GoDaddy, Bluehost, Midphase. A lot of publishers were a fan of a small orange. They were recently bought by Bluehost, which happens to be a terrible web hosting company, so I wouldn't recommend going with them. So the only out of all the WordPress hosts that are out there, that's why I like WP Engine, because they've been consistent from the start. The next part, when I said you have to link that domain name to the place where WordPress lives, you can get a developer to do that. Plenty of publishers have done it themselves. But this is something that I've never mentioned in a presentation before, just because I recently learned about it. There's actually a service called WP Valet, where you basically buy a certain number of hours each month. It could be 2 hours or 10 hours. And it's kind of like rent a freelance developer for WordPress, right? And it's a really solid team. And I love their model, too, because my problem with freelancing for a lot of small people is that it's hard to keep your hours under control, right? So you estimate a project to be 2 hours, it ends up taking 3 or 4 hours, and the time drags on. So it's hard to do. Their model is like you pay monthly, you pay this much money per month, you get this many hours per month. If you use it, use it. If you don't, you don't. And they just bill you. It's a great model for them, and you get some expert WordPress advice. So not only advice, but they'll do all the heavy lifting for you too. And there's a publisher who used this for something I'm about to tell you in a few seconds. Recent upstart. So these are some really nice to haves when it comes to getting a WordPress host. Reliability, it's nice to have a site that stays up. How many times where you have a publisher who has a huge story, it's about to get linked by, or maybe it is already linked by NJ.com or Huffington Post, and this happened to Red Bank Green, and then the site goes down. So you have, we talked about how important those peaks are, and then, you kind of plateau, and then you peak. Well, if you're on the way to that peak or that plateau and your site goes down, it's not going to happen. There are going to be no shares on Facebook. So you really want reliability. So WP Engine, going back to them, it's like $25 a month, and I don't care who it is. Just remember, you get what you pay for. A lot of those other hosts, GoDaddy, they'll say, hey, we'll host your site for $2 a month. Are you really going to build your entire business on a service that costs $2 a month? So I'd say minimum, you probably want to be looking at a host that's going to charge you about $19 to $25 a month. It's really not that much money. So you want your site to stay up. ideally, you would like a development site. So if you do have WP Valet working on your site, ideally you wouldn't like them to actually develop new features and things on the production site or the live site, because if they make a mistake, the whole site goes down. You want a development site. You want automated backups because sometimes data loss happens and you want to be able to revert. It does and it might be like once every 3 years kind of deal. But who was it? I think it was Virginia at My Verona NJ recently had a data loss, and the host was like, sorry, what do you do? A strategy for getting unhacked. So every now and then, this is a Hack Jersey, which Debbie mentioned before. All right, the site, and a few other big name publishers have had this. Ever go to a website, or you search for something in Google and you see like pharmaceutical links to all these medications that obviously the site probably shouldn't be associated with? That's called the pharma hack. And it gets into WordPress. They could have whoever the attacker was, could have brute forced their way into WordPress. They could have, just guessed your password, or maybe they got your password in a clever way. Or there's just a vulnerability in an existing plugin, which happens sometimes. And what they do is they inject code into WordPress, which writes itself all over the place. So it's almost impossible to get rid of. And then, someone eventually, and you have no idea because it doesn't appear to readers. It only appears to the Google search engine. So it does this cloaking thing where eventually a reader will reach out to you and say, hey, look, your site has all these, Cialis links and things like that. And, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? And then, it's very, very difficult to get rid of. I've never successfully gotten rid of it completely by hand. There's only one way I've ever gotten rid of it, and it's through a company called Security.net, which luckily, but WP Engine has a policy with, so if you went with them, you wouldn't ever have to deal with that problem. Site caching, just a site performance thing. You want your site to be speedy when you're getting a lot of traffic, and you want the other stuff that developers are eventually going to use, FTP, data access, all that stuff. One thing I didn't mention, these slides are actually at broadstreetads.com/March11. So if you want to just download these or follow along or make notes on your laptop or something like that, you can get them there. And I have the link at the end of this too. OK, so once you get set up with the site and the domain, the next thing you're probably going to want is eventually a logo. BrisaNet has a nice logo. Red Bank Green has a nice logo. Luckily, John Ward's wife, he's the publisher of Red Bank Green. His wife happened to be a graphic designer, so it worked out really well for getting a logo. But that's something you can outsource to. There's a company called 99 Designs, which I've recently become a really big fan of. It's for outsourcing graphics, and something like a logo, it might cost you like $250, but they do an amazing job. You get high resolution, and sometimes you can squeeze some extra stuff out of them. So like if you pay $5 for a logo, you're probably going to get a logo that looks like you paid $5 for it. And the great thing about 99 Designs, I did mention $250, which might sound like a big initial investment, but with 99 Designs, you have a lot of people, and it's kind of like evil in a way because creative people hate this. But you put up for auction you say, hey, someone designed a logo. I want it kind of to look like this, or maybe you have a sketch or something like that. And then you have all these designers coming out of the woodwork and submit proposals. And only one of them is going to win. So for Broadstreet's logo, we actually did that in 99 Designs. I think it's an amazing logo. Oh wait, there it is. Actually, it's not this fat and ugly in real life, just because this thing's skewed. But I love that it was done. We got it in a bunch of different colors. We paid a lot of money for it. But we had like 99 submissions, and unfortunately 98 of them went home empty-handed. So that's why the designers hate it, but I love it, and you guys should use it too. And 99 Designs at least puts them through that. There are all these agreements that they have to sign. They release the actual rights to the logo. So if you have a local agency make it for you, sometimes they retain rights to the stuff. So you can read through it, or maybe they don't explain it. Or do you really want like have a lawyer take a look at that kind of stuff? 99 Designs takes $250 at the minimum to get a nice logo made. And you can see other logos that were made on their site and showcase it. Really nice. So it doesn't have to be. Broadstreet paid a little bit more. Oh yeah, I'd say, well, you put it up, you set the price, really. You say, here it is, but if you want to attract the best talent, if you get all the people who, are generally worth the $250, it might work out, it might not. But with Broadstreet, we really wanted the best people to come and get it. So we put something nice up there for them to fight for. So Facebook page, Twitter account, obviously. About 50% of Red Bank Green's traffic comes from social media. So that's become a huge source of it. The other source is basically people Googling redbankgreen.com. which is crazy. So, and then there's a small sliver of people who are coming in. So it's a lot of direct traffic and people referred from social media. So that's a really big deal. And then, the other big part of the reason that's so powerful is that on the Facebook page, once you get people liking your Facebook page, you get injected into their social stream. Not as much as you used to. Facebook recently changed their algorithm for that, but you get injected right into the social stream. So on Facebook, I log in, I see all the news stories from the publishers that I like on Facebook. And then you can do some other fancy things, which I've done occasionally. You can boost a post, and that's the reason that Facebook doesn't selectively shows your post, is that they want you to boost it and spend $5 to promote it to a lot of people. But I've done it for Broadstreet posts, and I'm pretty happy with the results. You spend $5, $10 and get it out there, especially when you think it's a really big story. Let's see, newsletter. That's something that if you're just starting out now, if you've retained an email list of readers, or you have maybe you're just going around collecting reader email addresses on a clipboard. Kevin from Morristown Green does that. He'll bring a clipboard anywhere. It could be me, like I don't even live in Morristown, and he'll put me on the mailing list. Anybody, he just constantly carries that with him and puts people on the mailing list, and that becomes a huge source of traffic. You can set MailChimp to pull from your site every day and gather the latest articles and just send it out in an automatic newsletter. And statistics show that on Twitter, you might get like a click-through rate of 1%. So 1% of people who could potentially see the article or did see it actually click on it. With a newsletter, it's 33% of people that received the email clicked on some link in there. So it's a really powerful thing. And MailChimp's free and easy to use, and I'm a big fan of it. And then the last part, we'll get into an important part of this, the WordPress theme. So then you go onto the WordPress theme. So you have WordPress living somewhere at yoursite.com. Now you want it to look good, right? You want it to have a certain style to it. You go to BaristaNet, looks different than Red Bank Green, looks different from the Batavian. Every one of those sites has a certain look and feel to it. That's what a WordPress theme is. And you can get a lot of free WordPress themes. It's really just the layout and the colors and the look and feel of your site. You can get a lot of free WordPress themes. There are some premium WordPress themes. There's something that we built in particular for New Jersey News Commons, something called Blargo. All right, and you might be like, that sounds like a bad theme. I hate that name. There's a reason it's called Blargo. So there was originally a theme for WordPress called Largo. It still exists, and it was built by the Investigative News Network. And it built all these things into it that made it, in my own opinion, an excellent theme for news publishers. Broadstreet, Largo. Broadstreet built on top of that and produced a theme that we called Blargo. We didn't want to give it a different name because we felt like it'd be taking away from the fact that it had inherited from Largo, which in turn inherited from Project Argo, which is a WordPress theme. Long story short, it's a WordPress theme that you can use if you want to. Like I said, it's for WordPress, which I already strongly recommended that you use. I mentioned that it's a child theme of Largo. It comes with search engine optimization, so all that stuff that helps get your stories to the top of the Google results. It comes with caching built in. It comes with other plugins built in that help with the workflow. So if you have a team of editors working on something, it gives you some tools for collaborating within WordPress. And then what Broadstreet did is we built in our advertising system. So typically, this is what used to happen before Blargo. You would get a WordPress theme, and then you would say, OK, I need to put ads in there somewhere. Then I'm going to go sign up with a service like Broadstreet or OpenX or DFP. Then I have to paste in all these ad codes. That was a whole step that basically kept a lot of publishers from doing smart ad management for a long time. Blargo comes with Broadstreet built in. And it's so tightly integrated that when you install Blargo, there's a little tab, and it's called Ad Manager. You click on Ad Manager, and it just says, set me up with Broadstreet. So Broadstreet sets up all your ad zones, something that other publishers traditionally had to do manually. Sets up all the places in your theme where the ad should show up. And that's based off a slide that I'm going to talk about in a second. But the point is it has the ad management built in. So it takes a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of running ads on your site out of the equation. And then it has different color schemes, style options, et cetera. So I'm going to show you a site by an expatcher who basically set this up within 2 days of the final patch layoff. Was it like a month ago or? January 29th.
Oh, okay. It wasn't after.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It wasn't after we had our meeting here.
It was after.
It was, yeah. Okay, we had the meeting a week after, so I think it was like the day
Oh,
after
okay.
that we.
Yeah, my
actually
dates are all
brought it
mixed up.
Okay.
So they picked the colors, and the logo, I think, needs a little work. So this is New Canaanite. Originally, I guess the publisher of the New Canaanite patch. This kind of logo and this style, this was uploaded by the publisher. So if you're like, it looks kind of clunky, publisher. But Blargo is the framework here. These ads, they were inserted with almost no knowledge of ad tech, really. So in terms of laying out the ads, right? Blargo takes care of this for you, all right? So it basically dictates where your ads are going to appear on your site. And it's all optional, so if you don't want to put an ad a certain place, you don't have to put it there. But I will, in fact, I think I have a slide in here somewhere. But I'll just run through this real quick. The classic indie site basically has a lot of non-standard ad sizes. There's a certain set of ad sizes that are considered standard by the IAB, which is kind of the group that likes to make the rules on all these things. But the classic indie site, you go to Red Bank Green 2 years ago, and it had 1,000 small ads down the side. Or you go to Batavian to this day, 145 plus ads on that page. So I know we were talking about the model where every advertiser gets every page view. That will get you into trouble eventually. So 145 ads down the page, that it gets expensive in a way. Because just in terms of performance, when someone loads that page, that's 145 ad calls that are being made. We give all the publishers run of site, and you see 100% share of voice, but there's a better way. Eventually, you're going to kind of want to fix that situation. So a better idea, in my opinion, is that you use IAB, standard ad sizes. So we've all seen the box ads that appear in sidebars. 300 by 250. Blargo supports this by default, and it's also responsive. So if you're viewing it on a mobile device, it just looks nice. It would also be nice, you don't have to use Blargo, you can use anything you want, but it would be nice if you could also target to the home, category, and story pages. So instead of giving every publisher a run of site, Baristanet, they like to split their ads up into packages. So they say, hey, we can put you on this category, this category, this category, and that's a package. Or we can put you on the home page, but only the home page, and that's a package. And each of these things cost different money, and different things make sense to different advertisers. That's a very sophisticated way of doing it. You don't have to do it that way to start off, but it's very good to plan for that ahead of time. So anyway, you can split the share of voice. So Dave mentioned before that maybe you have an advertiser appearing in that top box 50% of the time, and then 50% of the time is another advertiser. This is all stuff you like to think about. So this is what I always like to show people. This is very similar to the layout of Blargo, just naturally, but a lot of news themes just look like this. So we talked about before, and I think he left, how to figure out how much money you're going to make. My favorite way to do it, because I think before we're all talking about like this top-down approach of, okay, how many people do I have in the town, or how many businesses? There's so many variables that come into play. It comes into like how good of a salesperson you are, or how nice the advertiser in the town. There's so many things that could be dictating how much money you're going to make. But what I like to do, at least when I'm talking to publishers, and what Red Bank Green tried to do, is start to plan out. How much, number one, what's the amount of revenue that I would like to take in from this site? So I always say, hey, set the, from Baristanet that, or from Debbie that you typically say 2 to 250K is possible. So take that number and say, okay, how could I split up my ad inventory so I could make 250K? How much would each of these ad zones cost? So I say that from this zone in particular, let's just say that you could make 18K a year, right? And that's based on 50% share of voice, so 2 advertisers paying $750 a month for that spot right there. So what's that? 1,500 times 12 is 1,800, or 18,000. So I like to basically plan out, and then eventually step back and say, is that realistic? So you plan it out. This is just the front page, but then you have the category page. Maybe you have the Kenwood page, or school, sports, kids, politics. Those are all different sections that you could be selling advertising to. And then a very classic question is when I don't have and I get this all the time. And it makes sense to ask me that kind of stuff just because I work with so many publishers, talk to them on the phone. A lot of them, tell me their pricing or they ask me about it. They say, when I don't have any traffic, where should I really start? And I say that, have the introductory price. Maybe you just get a couple ads on there, just 2 ads for free for a certain amount of time. But eventually, you can't really, I think CPM is such an unfair thing, CPM, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. That's what all the national publishers and advertisers use to do business. I think that's such an unfair thing to do on the local publisher side because there are things like how important you are in the community, how visible are you in the community. There are all these things, all these non-tangibles that come into how you could actually price your ads. So I say you got to start somewhere. Don't necessarily set your price too low. John Ward at Red Bank Green will tell you that he wasn't aggressive enough starting off setting his pricing, and it held him back for a long time. So when he started out, he said, okay, this is going to be $200 per slot in the sidebar, but his site grew really fast, and over 2 to 3 years, it was hard to justify increase in price 100%. So if he said, oh, I want to start selling at $400 or $500 a month instead of $200 a month, it became really difficult to raise that price over time. So I just say don't lock yourself into too low of a price, and I've seen some publishers do that, or they get spooked when they make their first ad sale and they said, oh, the guy said it was too expensive, so I gave it to him for $25. It's like, no, how are you going to build a business off $25? And then just plan out your zones. Make a spreadsheet and say this is what I have, this is the size, this is the share of voice, and eventually add it up. And these aren't outrageous numbers. 20 to 30K a month isn't outrageous. And if you go on Michelle's list, there are some publishers probably been around a lot longer who do anywhere between 500K and $1 million. But those are also some nonprofits and some folks that you might not really compare yourself with fairly. But the point is, just add it up to a point, that target revenue that you really want, and then ask yourself, okay, could I potentially sell all of these slots? If I have to sell this many slots, how many lawyers, how many schools are there? How many people are really going to buy that top slot? Are there enough for that? And if it sounds like you have to max out the entire town, it's not a good sign. But if it sounds like you have plenty of room to work with in terms of potential advertisers, that's a good sign. A lot of publishers have a really nice media kit, or they just put their ad rates on their site, so you can go see what they're pricing. Of course, a lot of them have a lot of traffic, and in terms of what the publishers price their ads at, it varies so wildly. Like Red Bank Green, their effective CPM, which is that's how much you pay per 1,000 ad views, and the average on the internet is probably I'd say $1 to $2 for an exchange. For if you want to buy on New York Times, it might be $5 to $6. But on a hyperlocal site, it's all over the place. Red Bank Green used to sell probably the equivalent of $1 to $2 CPM, where I think Barissanet is closer to $15 CPM. So Barissanet is just off the map, and they're doing well with it. So the point is, the pricing is all over the place. A lot of times it's really just what you can pull off. Okay, I'm going to run through these. So Blargo, I already mentioned. A lot of the stuff is taken care of you. All that that wish list stuff I mentioned in that previous mock-up. Responsive ad units, meaning you view it on a mobile device, looks good. Even for the wide ones, the banners, they scrunch down nice. Targeting to the home page, category, story, all that stuff taken care of. And on blargo.broadstreetads.com, there's a menu link. It's called Tips and Tricks, and it tells you how to do some of the cooler stuff, like in-story ads. You can target an ad specifically to a story or basically to all stories in a category, some really powerful stuff that is almost impossible to replicate with OpenExtra DFP, which are our competitors. Multiple ads per zone. So we talked about, by default in Blargo, you get 5 ads down the sidebar. But you can expand that to basically any number of ads you want. It could be, in a group here, maybe 5 ads. And if you look at, Batavian does this, where if you look down the sidebar, there'll be 20 ads, but those all rotate among each other. And then there's another 20 ads, and they all rotate among each other. So you get some very flexible ways of rotating the ads and keeping your advertisers happy. Rotation is kind of a big deal. Usually in the top spot, that ad doesn't always rotate. Red Bank Green and Barissanet do it the same way, where that advertiser owns that spot. But below them, they're all second-class citizens and kind of rotate among themselves. And that's generally to keep them happy, so somebody's not always getting the bottom of the page. All right, so why Broadstreet? It's built into Blargo, so if you end up using Blargo, sorry to say you have no choice. But like in general, Broadstreet was built as an alternative to OpenX, because OpenX used to be the ad server or the ad manager that dominated in the space, and it worked really well for a long time. But eventually, Red Bank Green had problems with it, Baristanet had problems with it, Batavian had problems with it, so they ended up moving to Broadstreet. But on top of that, we're not just a one-to-one match in terms of the feature set with OpenX. We actually have support. So if you emailed somebody at OpenX for support, you're not going to get an answer. If you email someone at Google, they unfortunately won't answer you. But we also do things that nobody else has. So automated email reports. You have an advertiser who's a little savvy, wants their clicks, views, impressions every month, week, quarter, year. We send that. We do hover tracking. Nobody else does this. So you want to see how many times someone's dragging their mouse over, or like how many times people are engaging with a particular ad. And that comes in handy. I'll show you in a slide. We do something called editable ads, which I'll also show you. We have an ad network, so very similar to the way alternative press allows publishers to share sales between each other. Broadstreet does this. And then we have this thing called Selfie, which I'm coming down. I want to get to that so badly. This is Broadstreet's. These are our editable ads. So if you go to Red Bank Green, you're going to see a lot of ads all over the place. The text is constantly changing. Dave mentioned how important it is to keep that ad fresh. So the clicks are, the clicks are still coming in, and the people are looking at it. Broadstreet lets this guy, his name is Stu. He runs a meat shop. I think that's amazing. And he takes a picture every day with his iPhone of whatever he's cooking for lunch, and he posts it to Facebook, and it gets pulled right into the ad every single day. We have a lot of publishers using this. Yeah, no, we used to say very, very boldly, I think we might say it somewhere. We say, we build the tools to help you fight off the big guys like Patch. We used to say that right on the front page of the site. So Stu does this. We have a lot of advertisers who are doing this. I have a couple grocery stores. And one thing it'll do is it'll constantly remind, if you allow it to, you can there's a particular setting, will constantly remind the advertiser to update their ad. They're called editable ads. In terms of the network, we have a lot more publishers than this in the network, but this is a good example. They're kind of like clustered in certain areas of New Jersey, but this is kind of analogous to Alternative Press's network, which very likely coming on the Broadstreet network eventually. So you'd see a whole lot more dots. They're kind of clustered in different places, but these are the publishers who can share sales between each other. Just an example of a network sale. This is going to blow your mind. Verona Public Schools. This is a public school district in New Jersey. And if you scroll down the page, there are advertisements on this site, the public school district. This is Annette, the ad salesperson for Baristanet, has sold ads through Broadstreet's network into Verona Public Schools. So you can now let your advertisers associate themselves, put them right on the school site. This school doesn't really they don't get that much web traffic, but the advertisers, NJ Pack and some of the other places, the kids camps, they're just so happy to be on the Verona Public Schools website. We have a contract with Cedar Grove and who else? Caldwell, West Caldwell coming through. And I think we're going to get a really good grip on the whole public school scene. I never really imagined that would be a use case for the network, but it kind of turned out that way. Selfie. All right, this is the best part because you guys are just starting out, and editable ads are something that you have to go out and actively pitch advertisers. The ad management, that's great, but it's all stuff that you have to go out and actively pitch. Selfie is a tool that when you're writing a post, I really should have put a certain slide before this one. But let's just say you're reading a post, and there's obviously a website around here, and you read this. It says, support Red Bank Green. Click this to insert your own message to thousands of Red Bank readers so they can see it. If the user clicks this, they can enter their own message right inside the page. Same formatting, same everything. And what they can do is say post now, right? So this happens in line with the content. You can control the styling. But the point is a reader can insert a message. It could be a small business. It could be a web designer who works from home that you never have the chance to talk to. Can insert this right in line with the content. And they can post it right there.
And then you have to approve it, or you can't.
Yes. Well, first they have to pay. And this all happens right in line with the content. So how many people have seen a self-serve system before where it takes you off to a separate page to go pay? And that usually loses me. And then they say, hey, upload your 300 by 250. How many, we just talked about how advertisers generally don't have their own ad. So that has always been a train wreck. So we say that self-serve text advertising, don't take the user off. Just keep them within the same experience. Let them pay right inside the post. This is what the payment form looks like right now. It's going to change a little bit in the future. And the way you do all this, the way you add this is you install a WordPress plugin. and then you add this little code. So you make the pitch to the user. Anywhere in your story that you want to add a selfie zone, as we call it, you just put this little short code and you say, support Red Bank Green, click this. So you can make a different pitch for every individual story you're writing. You have really strong pricing controls. So you can say that, okay, this is the price for a day, week, month, year. If a post is younger than 2 days, set these prices. If a post is older than 2 days, or if a post is in this category, or a post has these tags, set these prices. So it's a way to, actually, I'll just talk. It's a way to tap into, like I said, that designer who works from home. These are people that you would never call, that aren't on your list. You know, people who are just trying to start their own shop. You monetize blog posts. No one else has ever really, you know, you're selling your header and your sidebar, but what about the content? That's some really valuable stuff right there. And if you're willing to put allow a text ad right inside your content, you know, that's every day. If you put out 5 posts a day, you know, you stick to your. If I think that was a requirement at Patch, right? If you put out 7 posts a day. Yeah. And across how many sites? You know. Oh yeah, text ads are just naturally responsive. So you monetize those blog posts. If you put out 7 posts a day and you put 2 to 3 selfies, that's 14 to 21 selfies every day. If you charge $50 a month, if that's 21 times 50 times 30 days in a month, that's a lot of inventory. That could be like $25,000 in potential inventory. That is just you're passively trying to sell. And I will forewarn you that self-serve advertising has generally never worked ever. All right, and I'm saying that now, but we really believe that Selfie could possibly work because it takes so much of the difficulty out of self-serve advertising. So we're about to release this. It's about to go on Red Bank Green. We have a bunch of beta users. We have 85 to 100. If you want to get on the list, email me, and then I'll send you the form. You can sign up very quickly. And these are the future features. I know we're past the amount of time that we had, but we're going to eventually allow people to drag and drop images in there. We're going to email the buyers when the campaigns are completed to let them know so they can renew if they want to. We're also going to send them related content. So if they advertise on the weekend events page, there's a good chance that they're interested in the weekend events. So we want to keep those sales going. And we also allow the advertiser to update by cell phone. So they can update that message. Everything is approved by you, by the way. You get an email that says, do you want this run on the site? You say yes, that's the end of it. So that's kind of our editable ad stuff coming into it. I'll end it there. It's my email address, that's our Twitter, and this is where the presentation's at.